Welcome back, everybody. I'm Nick.
And I'm Fred, and welcome to the Frightful Frontier,
a show where we search for the best horror and sci-fi humans have to offer.
So this is our Frightful Find of the month. So we decided we're going to read a Frightful book. If it's more on the horror side stuff, we'll call it a Frightful Find. If it's more on the sci-fi side, we'll call it a Frontier Find.
Yeah. Yep. So this month, our first month of doing this, we definitely had one. Actually, it kind of hits both categories, but it was definitely, I would say, more in the frightful category. We started off with Intercepts by T.J. Payne.
Yeah, this was a really cool book. It was a really easy read. I kind of ran through it. You know, when I was reading it, I was probably reading like 50 pages at a time.
Okay.
So it was a good one, and there was no point of the book that I felt like it was dragging.
Yeah.
Like I feel like everything in it was a good part of the book.
Totally, I agree. And just so you guys are aware, we'll start this off by, we're going to kind of hit a few of the points that we liked about the book without spoilers, but later we'll hit a few more specifics that kind of cover the synopsis, and those may hit some spoilers, but we'll be sure to indicate that part and make sure you skip that if you haven't read it yet, because this is absolutely worth the read. If you have read it, feel free to check that part out, but otherwise we'd recommend skipping to the end of the video where we'll cover our next month's Frightful Find. So at this point, I mean, Intercepts, the thing that really caught me and like got me tied into this book in like the first 60 pages probably, there was like boom, boom, boom. There were three big events that just like, okay, you know these are tied together, like how is that all gonna come together? But it was just like so quick, and I was like, there's absolutely no way this author is going to be able to keep this up throughout the rest of the book. And sure enough, like Fred was just saying, there's no real slow parts of the book. He keeps you interested in a few different capacities, where some of it's just like that, whoa, what is going to happen next kind of interest, and some of it's just like you're so connected to the story and what's actually happening in the page. It's not so much about the curiosity, but it's just you're so committed to what's going on that you don't want to stop reading.
Yeah, this is a really cool one, because I like to think like if they made it into like a horror movie, like the production on something like this would have been massive. Yeah, like just like the concepts of it and like what happens to the people in it and everything like that. Like the descriptions of what happens to people in this are like shocking, you know, in a good way. It's
Agreed.
Like, it's brutal. It's gory. Yeah, it's gory, but it's also very real. Like it's not gory to be gory. It's like how people would react in that situation. If this was going on, if you were in this situation, like it all makes sense. It's not just gore.
And it helps move the story along too.
Yeah.
It's not just gore for the sake of gore. It really emphasizes how some of the characters would be, like you were saying, how you would react in that situation, and it really kind of helps bring you into the story. And usually sometimes that like body horror is just like whatever for me, not like brushing it off, but it just like doesn't do the horror for me. And in this, I thought it was so impactful. Like it really did just like kind of make you shiver. Like it was
And a lot of the body horror in this too is in like people changing or like being mutated or anything like that. It's like real, like if people grabbed their skin as hard as they could and ripped it, like type thing. Like it's not like a monster body horror. It's more of like a real, in a science lab, people experimenting type body horror. Which is really cool.
I don't think we really hit the synopsis of the book yet, but like really there's a main character, Joe or Joseph Gerhard, and he basically works at this like facility that is ran by a company that he doesn't know, and they do these like basically experiments on humans. They use them as a tool of some sort, and then somehow stuff starts happening at home, and it kind of all ties in. And I think that's about enough of a synopsis to like give it. I don't want to like get too into it. It's hard to delineate that.
This is one of those stories that
what won't.
if you go too far into it, you're gonna ruin a lot of the surprises, a lot of the fun of reading it.
Yeah.
But I think the idea of like a guy working at this super secret facility, it starts affecting his home life, and they got to figure out why. And there's a little bit of a ghost aspect to it too, which was really cool.
Yeah.
But the ghost is totally explained. Like it's not like, oh, it's a ghost. Like it's part of the what they're dealing with, and it all comes back to his work. I guess we'd say, without saying too much. But it's what is it? The epilogue at the very end of it was massive. I mean, that really was a really cool way to end it.
It offered a lot of context because I think one thing that the author T.J. Payne did really well was implant questions throughout the story, but then also kind of either half answer them or fully answer them throughout, and like. But it wasn't like a 1-for-1 throughout the entire book where it was like boom, question, boom, answer, boom, question, boom, answer.
Yeah.
It was like, it was kind of interspersed, and all of a sudden a few things came up and you're like, whoa, what's going on? In a good way, for sure. But then a few things were revealed that kind of tied it all together. And like, I thought that was really well done too, where it kept you curious enough.
Yeah, it's just like good writing. Like
right, yeah, absolutely.
They throw questions out there and you're like wondering about this, but there's literally something else that happens, and then there's like, all right, I'll worry about that later. Like you feel for Joe a lot in the story. You feel for him and his daughter a lot in the story, because they're dealing with all this stuff, and it's like, they have to worry about this stuff, but like there's literally something bigger happening like right in front of them, so they can't worry about those things. So you as a reader, you also don't worry about a lot of the little stuff.
Yeah. This is not spoiler heavy, but there's one part where there's like their dog runs away.
Oh yeah.
And I had totally forgot about that until it gets brought up later on. I was like, oh, yeah. Where it was like, and I love dogs. So it's just like one of those things that it was like, how did I forget about the dog? But it was because there were so many other just complex components going on that it was like there's a lot to keep track of, again, in a very good way. It's not difficult.
It's manageable way.
Yeah, it's not difficult to keep track of at all, but there's like, oh my, what's happening next? Like, how is he going to manage this? And I don't know. Overall, I think I would rate it 5 out of 5.
Yeah,
5 stars.
I'm gonna give it a 4.5.
Okay.
I just don't want to give our first book, and this kind of sucks for them, but I don't want to give our first book a 5 out of 5. But it's like on a channel and a thing that we're doing here where we want to mix sci-fi and horror and read those books. This is like the perfect book to start with. Totally. Because it does both so well. And the horror aspect of it is really cool, and the sci-fi part of it really explains everything. And that's what you really want out of a lot of stuff. Like, you don't want sci-fi that you can poke holes in through a lot, and you really can't poke holes in this. Like, everything makes sense.
Yeah, it all ties together. And like I said, some of those half answers even were actually perfect answers.
Yeah, it's like part of the story.
Yeah, where it's just like, the characters don't know, so it's not like there's some omniscient being that knows everything about all of what's going on, and you get all the answers at the end, but you don't feel like you're left in the dust and left curious in a way that the book isn't like fulfilling. Like, it still feels like a complete package as far as what was presented.
We're trying so hard not to spoil it.
Like, I was gonna say, I think at that point, like,
there's so many spoilers that could have been said. Yeah. And we're really not trying to, at least up to this point.
Yeah. I think that covers a lot of the general stuff. Absolutely would recommend this book.
Give it a read. Yeah.
It is on Kindle Unlimited if you're a Kindle reader, or if you have Kindle Unlimited. Fred's got the physical copy here, but Kindle Unlimited, if it's there for free, and super easy to cruise through. So absolutely would recommend it. I guess the average of R2 is a 4.75, which isn't a bad first start. We knew we were starting off strong, but
we didn't know this strong.
Yeah, well, I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. Honestly, with the cover too, I thought it was going to be like Aliens or something like that, but it was just, I kind of went into it more blind. and was really pleased with what I was presented with. So at this point, we'll probably get into the synopsis a little bit more and cover some specific points. Again, if you haven't read it, please skip ahead. Do not spoil this for yourself. It is very well worth the read.
Yeah.
We'll put a timestamp on the screen.
It's a quick read too.
Yeah.
We were, how many pages? 320. That's basically what it comes out to. But it feels like 200.
Yeah.
You know, like
I felt like I
feels,
cruised through it.
I think it was perfect length.
Yeah.
No extra junk. And straight to the point. And like I said before, I mean, I was reading 50 pages at a time.
Yeah.
And this is from a guy who would normally not read that fast or that much at a time.
Yeah. Definitely.
So yeah, totally worth it.
Yeah. Give it a go. We're going to get a little bit more into some of the specifics of why we liked it so much. Skip ahead if you would like to whatever the time on the screen is here. That'll be where we tell you guys next month's Frightful Find and what we will both be reading. Keep an eye out for that at the end of March. Okay, so as far as the synopsis of this book goes, so I mentioned earlier, Joseph Gearhart is the main guy. Right away, you find out he works in this secret facility where there's humans that are called antennas, and basically one attacks one of the employees and kills him. Right off the rip, like right away in the book.
The way they attack.
Yeah.
So basically you're told that these antennas can't feel, they can't see, they can't do anything essentially. Like they literally live in a void essentially. And the way they do that is like with this gas that puts everybody into this void. And this guy, this orderly just comes through. He's doing a rush job because he's got a date later that night. Yeah. And he doesn't strap down one of the antennas when he goes to clean up after him, because I mean they literally can't do anything. So he's going to clean them, and this antenna jumps on him and just digs through his body. Yeah, like literally just like shreds through it. And the writing on that part was, and that brought me into it like right away. I was like, all right, what's happening? And everybody that works at this facility is like, what's going on? How is this even possible? Like these antennas can't differentiate if something is in front of them or anything like that. Yeah. So the way she digs through him is insane too, because like essentially she digs like to the ground from his back, and she can't tell when she hit the ground. Yeah. Which was really cool. Yeah.
Following that, we find out, Joseph has to deal with this at work, and he goes up to his office and he gets a phone call from his daughter's principal. And he's like, hey, your daughter's been sitting here for a few hours. When are you coming to pick her up? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, what are you talking about? And they're like, oh, you don't know. Your wife unalived herself. And from there, it's his ex-wife unalived herself, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Ex-wife.
And his ex-wife and his daughter live a few hours away, so he's like, all right, I'm on my way. I'm coming to pick up my daughter. So he goes, picks up his daughter, and like, I don't even know I can't even comprehend trying to deal with a situation like that. But he goes and he picks his daughter up from her friend's house, and they head back to Joseph's house. They get back to Joseph's house, and his daughter walks in. So that was like the second big thing that happened, like right off the rip. Like we're maybe 40 pages in at this point.
Right.
And then you get back to the house, Riley walks in, his daughter.
And she's seeing a woman in a gown, like a hospital gown with black hair. They never say she's an antenna, but like you kind of know as reading. And she just keeps seeing this woman, and it gets to the point where she's terrified by this woman. Like this woman's like literally going after her. And Joe calls in the security as job to come check it all out. And there's a point where they are literally like in the room, and she's seeing this woman and nobody else can see her. So she's like a premonition or a ghost, and the daughter can't figure out what's going on. Yeah. And she knows, and at this point she figured out she's the only one that can see this woman, and this woman is going after her. Like, she is maliciously attacking her as much as she can. She can't physically do anything to her, but she sure does make it look like that. Like, she's going to, like, there's a point where she jumps at her and everything. And it's just making Riley, the daughter's name, look crazy. And, like, everybody just keeps saying, well, your mother just passed. Like, this is normal for you to go through this stuff. And she's literally, she doesn't sleep, she doesn't eat for, like, a lot of the story.
Yeah.
I think most of the book.
Yeah.
And she's trying to deal with this, like, woman attacking her. And then what happens after that?
So Joseph wakes up. They, like, end up going to bed. Joseph wakes up the next day, and his daughter's, like, still in the kitchen. He wakes up to the smell of coffee. His daughter's just been sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee all night. And he has to go to work. So then that day, a.k.a. what's his name?
Yeah, I think
some dude from corporate, so to speak, shows up, and he's there to, like, figure out what happened yesterday. Why did this antenna attack the person? And you kind of go through his day there, which, like, if ever in this book, that was maybe a slower point, but there was still things being revealed and, like, tension building. Mm-hmm. So it didn't even feel like a slow point. It was just like, it wasn't the chaos that was the start or the end of the book. It was kind of a informational stage, and you kind of just go through that work day.
I think, yeah, so they're using the antennas to look into people who are of interest of the government.
Oh, I forgot that's what happened that first day that a.k.a. was in the office.
Yeah, so he's in the office, and he's like, I want to see the antennas work. And basically the way they make them work is they strip them of all their senses and everything, which we already knew that. But then to get them to work, they give them back all their senses, like, right away. And they discovered doing that the antennas will, like, lock on to a certain person.
They'll, like, astral project, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And they'll see through, like, that person's eyes, or, you know, what that person's up to. And then they use that, like, a big person they're going after is, like, an arms dealer or something like that. So this government agency, I don't even know if it's government, this agency.
No, they just call it, like, the company and the facility.
Yeah.
And, like, things like that. So, and it's, like, capital letters, so it's, like, the proper noun, but they never give any, like, which is another thing that we kind of mentioned earlier in the video, where it's, like, some things weren't answered, but it didn't feel like they needed to be answered for the story to be complete. We never, like, actually find out who the facility or the company is.
There's no point.
But you don't need to.
Yeah, you really
like,
don't
you're
need
a little curious, but it's like, no, the story's great as is. So
right. So I think up, like, that point too, you learn. So once you learn what the antennas are used for, then you start getting a lot more of Riley seeing this woman, and you discover that this woman is Bishop. She's one of the antennas, and she is basically the most used antenna, and therefore she's essentially the most powerful. And she figured out a way to attack loved ones of Joe.
Yeah.
Because she basically blames Joe for everything because he's the head of their facility.
Yeah.
But really, you're learning through the whole story that Joe just works there, and he doesn't know anything either. He just knows he gets paid well, he's not allowed to talk about his work, and he's providing for his family.
Yep.
You know, so it's like... He's not a bad guy.
Yeah, he's not, like, oblivious either.
Right.
He knows that it's probably not great things, and, like, who knows what a lot of this could be used for, but he's not, like, doing it to be a bad guy. He's not a super villain. He's like...
Right.
Yeah, he's really just a guy trying to provide for his family, and happened to get into kind of a weird line of work. Yeah, like, I had a few questions that were like, who funds the company? What are the intercepts, and what do they determine? So that was, like, a little bit earlier.
Right.
I felt like the way that the ex-wife's unaliving was just, like, brushed over was like, there is definitely more to that. But again, it was like Joe is just dealing with the pain of his daughter, and, like, dealing with the immediate situation that is in front of him, and, like, having to help her there.
Right.
So it was like, it was done in such a way that it was kind of glossed over, but not left in the dust fully. Where it just you knew answers were going to come.
Right.
But it really, like, that helped keep me bought into the story. And then, yeah, what are the antennas? Why are they there? And, like, where did they come from?
Exactly.
So we had him, Aguirre, tuning into, or spectating a tuning session.
Yep.
And then Joe goes home at night and has Hannah, one of the doctors from the facility, come home with him to basically talk to his daughter and, like, see what's going on, because he can tell something else is going on with his daughter beyond just the trauma of what happened with her mother. And then when the doctor from the facility comes home and talks to Riley, Joe's daughter, it's just like a ton of stuff is revealed about Hannah and Joe, and, like, they have a history together. Hannah had a baby that died when it was young, and, like, that gets used against her, and then it becomes really clear that one of the antennas is basically tuning in to Riley, Joe's daughter, tuning into her and, like, controlling what she's seeing and basically controlling her mind.
And it's taken years for this antenna to do this. So
Yeah.
it's, like, shown that, like, this antenna has been working on this for years and years and years to be able to do this. And she essentially is, like, showing them images, like, that of their past, and, like, these horrible images, and if nobody can tell what's real and what's not real because they're looking through their own eyes seeing this. And that's just kind of dives in deeper, like, how powerful this antenna has begun or has gone to. And so eventually Joe figures out that this antenna was actually attacking his ex-wife before.
Yeah.
So, and it started 3 days before she unalived herself. So he's like, well, Riley is on clock now, because he knows how quickly his ex-wife devolved and couldn't take it anymore. And he, like, finding this out too, that this antenna was the reason his wife's gone. He's like, I can't let this happen to my daughter too. So eventually, does he talk with Bishop? I forget how this happens.
So basically he figures out that it is Bishop, and he basically just goes in and he just figures out a way to make her end her own life.
No, doesn't he? She tells him to do that at one point.
What do you mean?
I think Bishop intercepts Joseph at one point, and he's like,
so he was watching the cameras of Riley and Hannah talking, and he saw Bishop on that screen.
Yeah, but then he's like, how do I get you to stop attacking my daughter? And then she's like, kill me, essentially, or let me.
Oh, okay. I don't remember the
says.
Specifics of that part. Yeah.
Yeah, she definitely tells him at one point, and then he puts together the plan to essentially what he does is turns off the gas or breaks a line of one of the gas lines.
So yeah, cut to the next day. He goes into work. We know what Joe's next move has to be, but the way that the author wraps up this story is so good that, like, we can't do it justice here.
No.
So you've just got to go read it. Like, that's all we can say. We don't want to spoil the very end of it. We did hit a lot of spoilers here already, so I'm not sure we're saving a whole lot there, but the way it's written at the end, it's just, the tension is so thick, it's so present, and, like, the body horror is so effective. And it's just, I don't know. And then, yeah, you get to the end and it all feels pretty well resolved, and then you read the epilogue and it's just like, it's the cherry on top.
Yeah, and it's very cool too that the cherry on top doesn't feel like it's setting up for, like, a second book or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's more so wrapping up this book, and so it's just a standalone story. You know, he could always write another book. I can see this becoming like a series or continuing.
Yeah.
But I'm totally fine with the way it ended.
I was going to say, I love it as a standalone book. I don't know that I would be super interested in a sequel to this.
Yeah.
I think as a standalone book, it did everything it needed to. But the end of it is just, it's a great way to wrap up the story, and to kind of bring all the pieces of what we what we spoiled, bring all of those pieces together. So that's Intercepts. Like we said, 4.75 stars between the two of us.
Strong.
Absolutely a great frightful find for us to kick off our book club, so to speak. That being said, next month, March, we will be reading
Maggie's Grave, right?
Yep, by David
Sodergren.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a witch story, some folklore. It's like a small Scottish mountain town, I believe.
Yep.
But we'll be reading that one. Please join us. That's another one that is on Kindle Unlimited. So available to anybody with that subscription, which is, so far for me, has been just such high value. I've gotten my money's worth out of it already.
Oh, yeah.
Bit of a witch story, but if you want to read that along with us, please do so. We will be making a video towards the end of March, kind of similar format to this. We'll cover some of our favorite parts about it. We'll rate it. If there's not so favorite parts, we'll also cover those. So we'll do all that in that video, and then we will announce the following month's Frightful or Frontier find, depending on what category we want to cover.
Yeah, and I'm 140 pages in, 150 pages into Maggie's Grave, and God, it's great.
Yeah.
Two really good books to start with.
Yeah, we're starting off strong.
Unbelievable.
Which is cool. It's also like, it's reassuring. Like, there's so many good books out there, and it's because it's a new way for us to consume these stories. Like, I think we're both really bought in, and to start off so strong is just, it's just really reassuring that, like, there's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah.
We know we're going to keep finding good stuff, especially with the help of you guys, if you let us know. We're always on the hunt for what the next read or watch or play or any of those things. We just want to keep consuming media like this. So I think that'll wrap up Intercepts. Go out and give it a read.
And yes, thank you for traveling to the Frightful Frontier with us.